Welcome, everyone, to the first day of this 5-day Sesshin. Now, we have a number of people that are joined here at Maitreya Abbey, and there are also a number of people that have joined this retreat through the miracle of technology in their own homes. But the distance between us physically, whether we're at the Abbey or you're in your own home, is not particularly important, certainly to me, it's not. What I'm more focused on is the fact that something has brought all of us together, and you wouldn't be in this sesshin if your practice wasn't a very, very critical part of your life. And because of that love for the Dharma, love for this practice is what really connects us. And through the course of this week, as we all open up more and more and see more and more clearly what we are, and support each other in this practice, our hearts will open up more and more and more. And we can have that heart connection. And with that heart connection, we also begin to realize that the intimate connection that we have is a lot more than Zoom, what Zoom can provide, right? It's very intimate. It's very intimate, and it is, in fact, closer than our next breath. Okay. So today, what I wanted to do is just share a few thoughts from things I've experienced during Sesshin and in my practice that I hope may be a little bit helpful and supportive of your practice, just like you being here certainly supports mine. And one of the things that we can do this week is we have the opportunity to really see who we are, what's going on here, what is this moment. And some of you have been practicing for many years, even decades, and some of you are relatively new to practice, or at least to a real focused practice that you now are enjoying. And some of you have worked with koans. Some of you have done shikantaza, some count your breath, some observe your breath. Some of you have done, great heart work. But regardless of what your particular practice is, regardless of what that is, this is a chance to deepen your practice more fully, more completely, more profoundly this week. The first weekend sesshin that I ever did, and as I say, it was a weekend sesshin. After it was over, an acquaintance of mine said, well, hey, they had known that I was going to be in a sesshin. They didn't know what that was, but they had a perception, I guess, an idea. They thought they knew what it was. And they said, so how did it go? How did it go? Was that pretty fun? And I said, well, I wouldn't really say it was fun exactly. And they said, well, but I bet you are like super mellow now, super relaxed from that. I said, well, I wouldn't necessarily say I was like super relaxed, but during it you must have been relaxed. Well, not sure about that easy. And they said, well, what was it like? I said, well, there were a lot of times when I was in a lot of physical pain. My knees were like really hurting, and particularly my right hip was killing me. And really, it was really that painful. I said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would put it at about an 8 much of the time. Okay, about an 8 much of the time. And so they said, well, it sounds like it didn't go very well and not something you'd particularly want to do again. Is that right? And I said, well, there was one thing about it that I appreciated. What was that? I'd never experienced joy like that. I'd never experienced joy like that. Okay. And so I said I really wanted to, have that opportunity again. And one of the things I would encourage you, because when I went to that first weekend session, I didn't know what to expect at all. I had a little bit of trepidation about it, but I certainly didn't know what to expect. And I still, when I come into a session, I don't really know what to expect, but I do have some intention. Like I'll have an intention to really try to keep focused, to really try to be aware of what's going on even before I'm thinking, try to catch some of that. And then try to have the intention that when I don't catch it, that I won't beat myself up, but I'll be very compassionate with myself, right? And also compassionate with others that I'm sitting with and being with through the course of a retreat. One other thing that this person in that conversation, that was just about a literal sharing of that conversation with the person after my first weekend sesshin, was that they said, well, if nothing else, you were able to be away from all the stuff, all the crap, I think they said, that goes on in our lives ordinarily by being in that situation. But that's not right. At least it's not right in my practice. Yes, I have a unique opportunity, and we all have a unique opportunity to reach deeper and deeper states of samadhi, right? And really be able to experience more directly each moment. But I do bring things to Sesshin with me from the outside. I'm not always able to cut that out completely. Now, over the years, I'm able to do that much more than I used to be able to. But even when that does come in or creep in at times, I can just observe it. I don't have to engage it and then come back to what my practice is. And I would encourage you all to do that as well. And it's not surprising that that there are some things that follow us into the Zendo, into Sesshin, right? That Dharma wheel is always turning. It's turning right now. I mean, I'm changing since I first walked into this room a few minutes ago, and we're all changing. The universe is changing. So there's no way we're going to have anything fixed. It's this sacred space. We got this container, and it's impenetrable, right? Well, that's not my experience in my life. And yet, I don't want to understate how special it can be to be here and have this opportunity with so many of the distractions and responsibilities of our day-to-day life removed from us for these 5 days. That's an incredible gift and an incredible support for sure. One of the things about this too, as I mentioned, this is day one of a 5-day retreat. Well, you might think, well, 5 days, man, that's a long time, or maybe some of you are thinking that's going to be hard to sit for all that time, be in this environment for all this time. Or maybe some of you are thinking, man, I just wish it went 2 weeks instead of 5 days because I'd like to have more time than that. Well, regardless, we can drop in right now. You don't have to wait till day 3, that's when my mind's really going to settle down in day 3, okay? Well, it might or it might not. But the point is, we can do our best to drop in now, right? Drop in now and do the best we can. And keep in mind, don't underestimate all the other people that are in this sesshin that are giving this, focusing their attention and concentrated effort. And that's also energy that can affect our practice, just like we can affect their practice and each other's practice. In practice and in Sesshin in particular sometimes, I had a lot of focus on having this sense of urgency. I didn't want to waste time. We hear the Eno every evening. You'll hear it. You'll hear it this evening. Talk about do not squander your life. Right? It's a kind of raises goosebumps still for me when I think about that. And so very, emphasizing it, emphasizing the fact that life is short, life is fragile. None of us know how long we have, and certainly we don't know if we'll ever have any more time in a sesshin ever in our life, including, heck, if we had a heart attack or something tonight or something happened, we wouldn't even have tomorrow. So it's pretty darn valuable. So let's make the most of it. I kind of got that message when I first started practicing, or pretty early on in my practicing. But what I didn't couple that with so much was I knew, kind of carried this yoke about, boy, time's of the essence, life's fragile, who knows how much longer I've got. But I at times would lose some of my appreciation for what was going on too. When I was a kid, and we'd go out to a restaurant, parents would take me to some restaurant. When I was real little, they'd pass out these placemats that were throwaway placemats. And on the placemats, they would have dots, and they'd have numbers on them. And you take your pencil or pen or something. Hey, Mom, can borrow your pen? And you just, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you connect the dots. And this is well before video games, needless to say. And then at the end, it'd make a picture. Like, oh wow, that's a deer. It's kind of neat. The next time maybe, oh, it's a car. Whatever it was. And I loved those games. And there was one restaurant in particular that always did that. So I said, man, let's go. We didn't go out that much, to tell you the truth, but I'd kind of lobby for going to that particular restaurant so I could do that. But what I did was, I'll cut myself some slack. I was probably like, 6 years old, but I would just get the thing and just boom, 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 boom. Look, hey Mom, this is what I did. See, it's a car, and I would be totally lying if I said that I enjoyed pushing that pen or pencil around to create that illusion of a car or whatever it was, right? Heck no, I just wanted to do it. And I have to admit that tendency I had as a 5-year-old, okay, didn't completely go away when I was in my 40s and I was starting my serious Zen practice, okay? So I had a lot of focus on, man, this is Sesshin, may not ever get this chance again, urgency, urgency, urgency. But at times I tended to split up the reality of this moment, this wholeness, with some sort of concern or worry that I didn't get here quite early enough to sit in the Zendo, or, I was rushing from the kitchen to my cushion or whatever. And it was like I was breaking up this beautiful whole, right? And yet, at least with, coaching from my teachers, I realized that, okay, just observe that and I'll come back to my practice. That's just the tendency I have, right? So that's just something, I don't know if that would affect any of you or not, but it was almost like I needed to develop a patient urgency, if you will. Urgent, yes, but have a certain patience or compassion around it that maybe initially I didn't have so much. Well, there's a very well-known quote by my Dharma aunt, Joko Beck, that I know that many of you heard, but I want to share it anyway. And that is, she said, the only thing harder than Sesshin is not doing Sesshin, right? The only thing harder than Sesshin is not doing Sesshin. But, whoever said life needed to be easy, or was going to be easy, I don't know if I ever exactly signed up for life. I have no idea what happened before I was here, but I'm thinking that wasn't part of the deal, that it was all going to be blissfully easy and just no issues whatsoever. Well, recently, I was at a graduation ceremony for a college. It was at Vanderbilt, and their guest speaker for the graduation, or their keynote speaker, was David Brooks. And some of you may know him. He's actually a somewhat, I call him fiscally conservative person politically, but quite a thinker, what I would characterize as a very sweet man, just really sweet, kind. It just seems that way to me, just from watching him on NPR through the years when he does, and he'll give, he'll be in debates with other political analysts and things like that. I think he works for the Washington Post. But anyway, what he was talking about was not about the upcoming 2024 elections. He was talking about life, and he was talking about to these graduates of different phases of their life, what was really going to be important to them in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. And he took it up, I don't know how old he is, but took it up to certainly people that are more like my age. I'm 70. And he's known as they call him a cultural commentator, right? He really sees what's going on, or he really listens to what's going on, and quite non-judgmental in the way he does it. And one of the things that he pointed out that in his own life, he told a lot of personal stories, in his own life, times that were particularly just fun and particularly enjoyable to him, those weren't the things that really made the biggest impact, as much as he enjoyed them at the time. But what really profoundly impacted him was the really difficult times, the times that he might even describe as either traumatic, horrific, scary times like that. And that really helped shape who he was. It was interesting because I know that in hospices, they use some of David Brooks' teachings, including that little thing that I shared, to help people that are grieving after the death of a loved one. And David Brooks has certainly been through that experience, and that was where that came from. Anyway, he was just making that point that not necessarily the easy times, but difficult times can be periods of great growth for us. But I wanted to give you an example from my life that I experienced in Sesshin, and was illustrative to me, at least, or I certainly felt that way, of a difficult time. And it wasn't something outside the context of Sesshin. It certainly wouldn't be viewed as any kind of tragedy or difficult thing. But things in Sesshin were in a kind of a microcosm of life in one sense. I mean, it's still life, of course, but it is a little bit more of a simplified format of our life. And things can get, for me, through the years in Sesshin, things can become more intense that might be viewed as me outside of Sesshin as a pretty minor thing, just a very little blip on what's going on. But in the context of Sesshin, it can be, whoa, oh man, I messed up, or that's really too bad, or I feel really bad for this person, whatever it is. And they can become aggrandized in my stories about what's going on. So I don't know if this is aggrandized or not, but I'll share it with you. I was working on, in this particular Sesshin, I, for a few years, been working on, a couple of years anyway, been working on koans, okay? Been working on koans. And I was working on a particular koan, and happened to be at this time, I would sometimes work on the koans with Sesshin Roshi, and sometimes with Roshi Shinko. It was a pretty neat hybrid of different styles and manners, and it was really helpful. But anyway, so I was working on this. It just happened to be with Shinko, and I'd been working on this particular koan for a long time, for months, and I couldn't get it. And I'd already had an experience prior to this, but I worked on a koan for over 2 years, and I didn't get it. Eventually, whatever get it means, I eventually went on to the next koan. But so I'd had some experience with working a long time on koan, and not having I don't want to use success, but being passed to go on to the next koan. So at this time, Roshi Shinko said, "Well, that's not it." But then as I was standing up and getting ready to exit the Dokusan room, she said, and she asked a question. And the question was not a testing question. The question was to help urge me into seeing what was, in one sense, kind of right in front of me, but I couldn't see it. And so I said, man, I still don't get it. And then she gave me another little nudge, or, kind of helpful teaching method there. And I still didn't get it. And by now, my frustration and a little bit of shame, right, had come up as about, man, I just can't bleep and get this. And so I said that, and not in quite those words, that I was struggling that much with it while I was still standing up, getting ready, like enough, I can't do it anymore, right? And I was crying, I had tears coming down my eyes and all that. So anyway, I did say one final thing to her too before I left, and that was, I said, I'm going to keep working at this, but I said, if I don't ever get this koan, if I'm working on this 30 years from now, right? And even though I'd cried and been so frustrated at that moment, by the time I said that, it was like, it's okay. I don't have to get this koan. I like practicing. I don't care if I ever get this koan. I'm okay with my own lack of clarity in the way I see the world right now. But I'm going to keep coming back, and I'm going to practice with other people, because I like going back to my first weekend session where I said it was joyous for me. I just like doing this. I just like doing it, and having not always just happy or successful, but being able to have what I would call very rich experiences. That was something up until that point in my life I'd really not appreciated, but I did appreciate it now. So I would just say that, koan practice, can, at least in my situation, I definitely appreciated working on koans, some more than others, definitely. But I also, what I continued to get out of the koan work that I did was things like that experience where I began to see God, finally let all my filters down and take some of my masks off and just be who I was, which was a frustrated Zen student that didn't get it and felt unworthy for not for very long. But then after that, then, wow, okay, man, maybe I can just be who I really am. I don't have to be a good Zen student. Who cares? But I'm going to keep coming back. Anyway. The other thing that crossed, when I went back and sat on the cushion after that, another thing that crossed my mind was, because I'd actually had this idea before that, I was like, well, maybe I should just quit. I just can't do it, And then I was thinking about that. It's like, well, how can I quit? Why am I going to quit? Because I have practiced long enough to know that this practice is my life. So how am I going to freaking quit? I don't know how to do that exactly. So one way or the other, I'm going to have to deal with my life. So I'd rather do it surrounded by teachers that love me and Sangha that supported and loved me, and vice versa. Right? And yet, in spite of some of these things I'm sharing about the joy that can happen, and also learnings that happens in practice, sometimes, whether in session or not, things can be pretty daunting. And stuff can come up that's very, very difficult to deal with, right? And I was talking to a practitioner who was sharing a story with me, and she had been in a Year to Live workshop that I did, and then she'd also been in some sessions, albeit not with this particular Sangha, and she was talking about how recently, after the session, stuff had come up for her. And so she was at a family reunion, and she was talking to her brother, and her brother said, well, I don't know why you're so worried about that or concerned, everything's going to be fine. It really is, which in one sense is certainly correct. But she was talking about some of the issues she had with a family member who was dying and how hard that was on her, and not knowing what was going to happen to this family member after they died. She was really tormented about it, but her brother was not, seemingly. He said, hey, it's all going to be great. He'll be with our Lord Jesus, and he will be in a very, very, all of her pain, all of her suffering will go away, and she'll be fine, this person. And so when she was talking to me, she said, I would just give anything to have faith like my brother has, to not have to be tormented, but to just know, he thinks he knows anyway, that everything's going to be fine. And she said, I wish there were faith in Zen. I wish there was a faith in Zen, okay? So, you know, I didn't particularly, I wasn't going to discuss it from a standpoint of, she wasn't my student. I just listened to her. But of course there is some faith in Zen. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, read the 3 pillars of Zen, or familiar with Yasutani's, Roshi's, great faith, great doubt or great questioning, and great determination, right? And where if you have even just a little bit of any one of those things, they can kind of snowball and build off of each other. Because in one sense, they sort of all contain the other. So if you have a little bit of faith, even a little bit of faith, that could be enough to kind of jumpstart your practice. And then as you get a little bit of faith, then maybe you start, I still have some hesitancy about this, so you ask some questions, you have some doubt, right? But maybe you get a little bit more determined because you had just a few moments of where your mind quieted down a bit at a sesshin. So, okay, I'm gonna come back for a little bit more, that sort of thing. And so I might touch on that a little bit more, but the one thing I did share, which I read in some book on Zen, and it was that the only thing we can really know for sure, have faith in for sure, is that we can trust this moment to be as it is. So that I did say, that's, can you do that? Can you experience that? And she said, well, it didn't seem very particularly helpful, but I was sharing a little bit about some of these other pillars of Zen too, and how they could, in my experience, how they helped me. But one of the things is that we don't necessarily, and I'm guessing, I'm inferring that she was struggling with, was that not having this faith was that we don't, when we're being told then, well, okay, you can depend on this moment to be just like it is. Well, that might give a very rich practice to be able to do that. In fact, it would, from my experience, but that doesn't mean you're going to like everything that happens in this moment. There could be things, do you like it when you have your boss is chewing you out at work? Do you like it when you have some kind of a spat with your partner in life? Do you like it when, you find out that you have, multiple myeloma cancer? I mean, there's a lot of things that can come up that you might not particularly just relish having. So, and you're telling me that's it? This moment to be like it is? Well, hell, I don't like this moment to be like it is. So you get into a point here where, it's as if we're in a culture, certainly I am too, of we love remote controls. It's like, okay, I'm watching this Netflix movie. It's not really doing it for me. Click, boom. I'm going to go over to Amazon, or I'm going to go, whatever this stuff, and watch all these movies or something. Just change channels. More metaphorically and figuratively, we can just change channels when there's something that we don't like. Okay, so I think that's kind of habitual. And I think that's hard. In Sesshin, it's a little harder to do that. I mean, you can daydream, you can fantasize, we can do things like that. But at the same time, there are certain sort of limitations on what we can do. Maybe you want to squiggle, maybe you want to this, but we try to do our best not to do that, right? And so over that, you can feel confined. So we get more and more able to deal with stuff that otherwise might seem pretty difficult, where we might want to change the channel. And I think when we do that, my practice through the years, my container gets a little bit bigger. Sometimes it shrinks back up again, but then hopefully, over time, it's getting bigger. And when it gets bigger, there's more stuff that doesn't really seem to be so cripplingly difficult. And a lot of stuff is lighter, and even stuff that others might view as serious can have a lighter touch around, right? And keep in mind being supported by, all of you, and sharing other stories and hearing people's other concerns and stuff. We learn from each other in this practice. That's one of the beautiful things about being in a Sangha. But there's another couple of things that I want to share with you that in this, just talked about the practice is not easy. It can be quite difficult at times. And that line about, well, the only thing more difficult than doing this is not doing it, right? Not that Joko talks about. But there are a couple things I wanted to share today with you that I think are quite helpful as far as giving us, me, certainly me, the confidence when life gets tough and when my practice gets tough and my mind is jumping around more than I would care for it to be at that time. And that is that I don't have to practice Zen and to be able to see more clearly and to have more insight into who I am and experiences of who I am. I don't have to become, nor did I ever have to become something different than what I am. I don't have to become Sesshin Roshi, right? Or Roshi Shinko, or any of you. I don't have to do any of that. I'm already all right as I am. I'm in good shape there. I can be, in fact, the practice is about seeing what I am, and each of us seeing what we are, okay? It's not about changing. It's not swapping places with something. It's being what we are. And, there's this, I actually heard this, I later heard, oh, that's just a story, but I heard it, I did see it exemplified one time. I was in this museum, and it was actually, I was a Louvre, and I was a kid with my parents. I was 6 years old, and we're looking at, I think it was the Venus de Milo, this sculpture, and I remember like asking my mom, wow, first of all, certain body parts are not there anymore. What's going on there? But then secondly, just seeing the face, and how can somebody do that? They're explaining, well, they're sculptors and they can use marble or different media, and you can, they explained it pretty simply to me. But then this guide that was with us said, well, I'll tell you how they do it, okay? What they do is they knock away all the marble that's not the Venus de Milo, that's not the statue. They get rid of all the excess, right? They get rid of all the excess, and what's left is just this beautiful form, this beautiful statue. Well, that's quite the metaphor for what we do in our practice. What I try to do in my practice, get rid of all my crap, and I get rid of it at times, comes back, get rid of it again. It's a continual process. But that metaphor for me of the sculptor that just gets rid of the stuff that's not the person that they're sculpting, I think is pretty powerful. That's quite different from having to change everything. Anyway, and by the way, when Sesshin Roshi was giving a talk this past Saturday, I can't remember if somebody asked him or he just offered up that, in his almost 60 years of practice, had he gained anything? Well, not necessarily gained anything, but he lost a lot. Let go of a lot. I was kind of thinking of, shifting out your own statue there, sort of getting rid of stuff. So that's, I think, one thing that's really important is that notion that we're already okay, but we got, Suzuki Roshi's line was, you're already perfect, but hey, you could use a little work. It's a little bit like that. Okay, and then another thing that another point that I wanted to share, which is, I think, for me, a really important point. And that is, there's an irony here, but this koan, some of you have worked on it in Book of Equanimity, and that is not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate, right? So what the heck does that mean? There's a conversation between teacher and student. The teacher asks a few questions. And in each case, the student says, I don't know. And then finally the teacher says, well, not knowing is most intimate. So don't want to try to even attempt to unpack that all here, but basically this notion of we really can't know things conceptually or intellectually nearly as well as when we open up don't have a preconceived concept or notion of what something is, and then we can have this more direct experience. Okay, so take me, I had some health issues when I was a kid, and I didn't learn to walk till I was, I think, 3.5, something like that. Okay, so I didn't know how to walk. I didn't know how to walk, right? But then eventually, I changed and I was able to walk. Okay, obviously, but fortunately, and that was a pretty big deal. But it's not like now. I could tell you how I walk. I don't know how I walk. I can do it fine, but I have no idea how I do it. And I studied, biology in school, and I studied physiology, and I studied anatomy, and I studied, biomechanics and stuff. Well, theoretically, I learned how you walk, but that's not really knowing how I walk. That doesn't capture it all. It's pointers. It's pointers. It's like the, example in Zen training of, pointing the moon is not the moon, right? So anyway, to me, it's so ironic that what we really can know is through not knowing. That's it, right? So we're already okay as we are. We don't have to be somebody different. We can certainly, as Suzuki said, get rid of some, do a little better, do a little improving, but we also can shed off all this crap, these personas, everything we're carrying around, this extra baggage, and that takes a lot of work for most of us to be able to do that. So for me, it's a lifelong, and I'm sure many lifelong journey to do that. So a couple of quotes I want to mention here, and that is to this point about not knowing, a quote from Einstein, and then also a quote from this well-known statistician, George Fox. But Einstein's quote, and he gets presented in slightly different ways, but I'll do it. One of the readings I saw said, to the extent that mathematics is certain, it doesn't reflect reality, and to the extent it reflects reality, it isn't certain. Right? And so that's sort of a pointer in that same direction about we really can't know. We can't just know everything. But then George Fox, the statistician, had a similar quote where he said, all models are wrong, some are useful. Right? So there's a lot of things that we may not know from an absolute kind of standpoint, and yet we build bridges. We have civil engineers that connect. We can send a rocket ship to the moon, that sort of thing, or at least So anyway, just wanted to share that, and then the other thing that I was talking about, those three pillars, the great faith, we talked about that a little bit, and yet still questioning, having this great doubt or great questioning. And then the last thing about great persistence. And it reminds me of a statue that my dad had on his office desk. And it was, somebody had given it to him. He was a minister. Somebody gave it to him from the congregation. And it was Sisyphus pushing this rock, right? And I was asking my dad about that when I was visiting his office one time, and he explained to me the story of Sisyphus, and he was basically sentenced to, for all eternity, of pushing this rock up the hill and go back down, just on and on, pushing like that, right? But in our Zen practice, I wouldn't want to be Sisyphus, but at the same time, we can keep pushing that rock. What's really the problem when we push the rock? And the problem starts in spades when we start realizing, man, this sucks. I am in hell. I'm so sick and tired of pushing this rock, right? In our practice at times, people can experience what are called dry spots in their practice. They don't want to sit. They don't want to be around other Sangha members, whatever, okay? And so, but they can keep pushing that rock. They can still keep doing it if they choose to. And they can also not do it. Up to them. Recently, I was fortunate enough, I spent a couple of weeks in Vietnam and got to visit many temples, and also hear an abbey, a monk in one of their temples talk. And then Roshi was sharing on one of the Saturday programs here recently that he had a conversation with a Vietnamese monk too, years ago, And the monk told him, hey, when asked about his practice, he says, oh, here's my practice. See every person as the Buddha, hear every sound as the Dharma, and experience every place as nirvana, right? Wow. That's, I love the simplicity of that. But again, simple, but not easy. But I think that's so beautiful. And then I want to close with just one little story. And you may have all heard of this. I don't know. I had not heard this, but I just happened to chance upon it here recently. And it's a story of, and even if you have heard it, maybe you haven't heard a little twist that we can put on this story. But it's the story of this rabbi who lived in Krakow, Poland. And he had this dream. He had this dream 3 times, and it was about this treasure that he was going to discover. But he's going to have to take this journey to get this treasure, and he was going to have to journey to Prague. So he goes to Prague. This guy asks, "What are you doing? What are you digging around? What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I had this dreamed it 3 times. If I came here, I was going to find this treasure." And the guy just laughed at him. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I had a similar dream. I only dreamed it twice, but I had a similar dream. And I dreamed actually that in Krakow, where you just came from, that there was a rabbi there, and he had treasure right there." And so the guy who had made the journey, only to be told that basically he was full of beans, right? He's like, "Holy crud, could that be me? I'm a rabbi. I'm from Krakow." So he journeys back home. And this guy had even told him that in his dream, the treasure was supposed to be in a space between the wall and the stove. So this guy gets back, and he, of course, as these stories go, he finds this treasure between the stove and the wall of his own home, right? So he's very happy to have those riches. So, when I first heard this story, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's a nice story. Just, gee, we sometimes can't see the treasure that we have just right underneath our nose all the time. But that's part of it. That certainly can apply. But the other part of it is that, no, to really see the treasure, we got to do the work. We got to journey, right? So this week, we have an opportunity to do the work and uncover more and more and more this treasure that we all are. We all are collectively, individually, like this monk said, see every person as the Buddha, right? Hear every sound as the Dharma, every place as nirvana. And so with that, this week we go on, we live our lives of the Buddha. We can eat, we can sit, we can do walking meditation, we drink, we brush our teeth, we pee, we poop, we take out recyclables, we work in the garden, on and on and on it goes. But that is our life as the Buddha.